Back in March, we each got a budget allocated to us to buy a new classic project car for the Classics World fleet. I had 750 quid to spend, but spent just 400 of it on this 200,000 mile Peugeot 205. Jeff spent his full 1,000 quid on that rather lovely Ford Puma, and Aaron opted to spend his 1,500 quid on that rather nice 4-litre Range Rover P38. We've done some improvements on these cars over the last 6 months, and to celebrate our time with them coming to an end, we were going to be going on a really nice road trip all the way through England to celebrate each of these cars in their natural environment. A certain pandemic has put paid to that, which means we're going to have to go a little bit more small scale.
So what we've done is we've come to Warwickshire and one of the UK's leading motoring destinations, Caffeine and Machine, and we're going to take a short trip through the countryside to another leading motoring destination in the British Motor Museum.
Yeah, and on the way there we're going to be putting you through how these cars have treated us in the last, what, 6 months?
6 months, yeah.
And what problems we've encountered and maybe whether we've regretted our choices or not. So join us on the drive to Gaydon and we'll tell you all about them.
Let's go.
That's the passenger side. You know what, when I first got the Range Rover, I thought, what a pointless vehicle. It's so heavy, it's going to inevitably cost me a fortune. And what do you get for it? You get a car that doesn't ride quite as well as a Jaguar would, for example, and it's not very fast. But since buying it, I've really come to warm to the Range Rover. Honestly, it's like having a country cottage, and you sit on a nice evening. It's like sitting next to a fire, a wood-burning fire, and mate, it is so charming. Has it caused me the grief that I worried about? You know what, it hasn't. The air suspension hasn't really been an issue. It's been up on a ramp. The only thing the suspension wanted were new drop links at the front, and they have helped the steering a little bit. The BCM is still causing issues. I've replaced the door latch, obviously, as I mentioned in my previous video. It's helped but not fully solved the problems. I've totted up the totals of all that it's cost me so far, and it's just a shade under £1,000. The servicing, ignition leads and mass flow air sensor, that's cost me about 400 quid. 8 spark plugs, remember. Drop links done at the front, that's tightened up the front suspension a bit, but I've come to realise that no P38 is going to be perfect in that respect. Another 100 or so quid. And then the new headlining has gone in, helped the interior no end, 350 quid. So yeah, we are getting there, but it answers that ultimate question that we had at the beginning of this whole project. Is it worth buying a cheap P38? Is it going to be that kind of case of buying guide for Range Rover P38? Don't. Or could it be a bit of a hidden gem? Is it the cheap way to get into a classic with all the enjoyment and character? It is like nothing else, a Range Rover. And the answer is really that it is. It can be really rewarding and not a disaster. As long as you buy right. I'm really going to miss this car when it goes. It's been an absolute joy.
You have to rewind back to February for when I first brought the Puma home from Cornwall as my £1,000 contender for this challenge. And I knew back then I wanted something fun, a little bit sporty, something to enjoy. And 7-8 months down the line, that's exactly what I've got. I've been really, really happy with the Puma. I probably should have done a little bit more homework at the time to find out what goes wrong with these cars. But I got lucky, I think. Bit of beginner's luck perhaps. A routine service when it first arrived. There was a little bit of a problem with the throttle body. That had to be plugged up. Bit of tidying here and there, but really nothing serious, and everything I've been able to do at home. The community around these cars has been fantastic. Anyone I've asked for advice told me where to look, what parts to get. For instance, the cam cover gasket. I was told, buy a Ford one. Buy a genuine Ford one because the aftermarket ones can leak and aren't very good. And that's good advice, and that's come from the community. It's things like that that make the ownership experience that more pleasurable. There's not millions of them on the road, but the people that do own them seem to be quite passionate about them. bodywork's been polished a little bit, and it's had a couple of new rear tyres because one of the old ones was 14 years old and it didn't match the other side, so it's now got Avons all round. It can fill the role of a brand new car ably. There's no real compromises with it. The heater works, the screen demister works, it's got aircon, the boot's big enough, I can get my shopping in. You could quite happily use this as an everyday classic. To some people's minds it's not a traditional classic, and grant you it's no Triumph Stag or Mark 1 Escort or something like that, but its time will come. I really do think. But the main thing is, it's just really fun to drive. It's so snappy, short geared. It will show a clean pair of heels to quite a lot of things. Only 125 horsepower, but like I say, that short gearing makes it really, really rapid. 0 to 60 times aren't going to blow your socks off, but it's the way it feels. Lovely steering. I'd implore anyone to have a go in one of these and say they didn't like it, especially at the money you have to spend to buy one. Ford just got it right, I think, with this. Apart from the rust prevention, they didn't get that right. I would happily keep this for years. Cherish it, polish it, keep it in the garage, and just watch it appreciate, which I think that it should do. I've spent 7-8 months with it now, and it's still the one I take home. It's still the one I take for a drive to the shops. I mean, it's just great. You'd have to work really hard to prize me out of this one and into one of the others. I rate the Puma experience. Go and buy one.
A year ago, this car was sat in the fens, basically abandoned. A month ago, it had a hole in the front wing that you could stick your fist through. It shakes, it rattles, there's countless bits missing or broken. The driver's side window can be pushed down with your hand. Driving it at 70 miles an hour on a motorway is like being in an allotment shed on a windy day, and I'm fairly certain I have contracted something off of this steering wheel, but I just do not care. I love this little Peugeot. It was easier for the other two to take the mick out of it when I first pulled in with it. Yes, it was tatty, it was rough around the edges, it was showing every single one of its 201,000 miles. And yet, I saw potential in it. I was charmed by it, enough to put, well, not my money, someone else's money down to buy it, and I am so glad I did. This has been a loyal, faithful old friend to use over the last few months. It's never put a foot wrong, it's never broken down, it's never once let me down or failed to do what I've asked of it. Yeah, it's rough around the edges, it's tatty, and it's by no means as good a condition as either of the other two cars. But here's the thing, it's got character, it's got charm, it's got that indescribable personality that actually makes us connect with classic cars. The reason why we own classics as opposed to just buying something brand new. It's not been the easiest cheap classic to own, if I'm honest. A lot of the parts are either absolute unobtainium, like a new gear knob, or they're preposterously expensive, like a new parcel shelf. But because this is only a 400 quid car, you make do and mend. You 3D print a new gear knob. You try making a Berlingo parcel shelf fit, and then it splits in half and then doesn't fit. So I then used a spare Fiat Seicento one I had and cabled side that up. And it works. Cars like this teach you about how to work on cars, how to make the best, how to fix and repair stuff. That was what I wanted to do by buying a classic car for so cheap, to show that anyone, regardless of their age or experience or budget, could get into a cool old car and have a go. And in that respect, the 205 has been a total success. I had the smallest budget, I spent by far the least, and yet I got the oldest car by a considerable margin, and I got the one that most people love. You turn up to a car meet in it, you take it to the shops, you take it to Caffeine and Machine like we've been to, and people will crowd round it and look at it and talk about it and take photos of it. People love this car, and I have to say, after all this time, so do I. And this is what classic cars are all about. Objectively, this isn't a very good car, and it's certainly not as nice of an example as the Puma and the Range Rover are. And yet, I still love it for its quirks, for its flaws, for its character. I'd rather be in this little 205 than either of those other two cars. And that's what it's all about.
Hey gents,
All right.
Nice to get out in them after a while.
1 second.
Ooh.
Just setting up my seating arrangement.
Shift up.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
hold on.
Social distancing.
Social distancing.
That's why you bought that. You've had that car for 6 months to do that joke, haven't you?
I bought this car for that reason. No.
It's a very good bench, but a very expensive bench. Over 3 times the price of my car.
Yeah, true. How have you got on with it?
Do you know what? It's been really good fun. It's been nice to get out and enjoy it. I haven't kept up with either of you. It took me 10 minutes longer to get here. But yeah, I've really enjoyed being out in it. This, you look like you've had a cracking time.
Yep, I have. No regrets. Certainly no regrets.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't had any regrets about this either. It's not left me stranded, and it's just been thoroughly enjoyable.
That car has belied its reputation.
It really has.
That
I
car's
think
been
that's the whole
biggest
point.
surprise.
Yeah,
Really
no,
has.
I think a real bargain. But come on, quick fire. Yep. If you had the choice out of all 3, which one would you drive home in?
Well, I'll tell you, don't leave your keys hanging around because I'll snap them up. But if it were the long way home, I'd take that. But if it were the motorway, this thing just has a way it goes down the motorway.
You know what? 100% with you. I've got a twisty route home, Foss Way, down through the Cotswolds.
That'd be the dream, really would.
But you've got the M6 and the A14, and for that, if I could afford the petrol at least, I'd be in Boaty McBoatface.
You would be on first name terms with petrol station attendants though.
So, Joe, what would you have?
It's tough because objectively I should go with either of these, probably that. Because they're a lot nicer cars to do mileage in, even that they're going to be a lot more comfortable, a lot more refined. You're not going to feel like you're on a ship on a windy sea, unlike with this. And yet, I still, even after everything, I still would take this because
You've really bonded with that car, haven't you? And
yeah,
There's really no hope for him. Not at all.
I can't explain it.
You get that across in obviously the videos that you've done doing it up, and obviously, you know, if you haven't seen those videos already, go to our Classics World page and have a look at them. And there is coverage in the magazines as well, Classic Car Buyer and Mart.
There's a little banner popping out, so if you've missed any of the project car videos, click and you can have a look at all the videos of us getting hands dirty on 3 cars that actually have been completely reliable.
But let's face it, we're never going to be able to decide
We're not.
between them, are we?
Let's bring an adjudicator in. Paul, you started all this, you can finish it.
Yeah, sorry, it's my fault, isn't it? Well, I think it's a bit of a primary school sports day, really. I think we've got no talk of winners and losers. We've got 3 winners. We got cheap thrills with the Peugeot, and it was cheap. It was pocket money. Cheap and nasty, some would say. It's got you here, though.
People
and
love
it
it.
might even get you home again.
Everywhere you go in it, people love it.
People do seem to like it, yes, particularly you. The Puma, I mean, this is a cheap way into fast forward, isn't it? I mean, it's a lot cheaper than an RS Turbo or a Cosworth or something like that, and it's probably as much fun. The Range Rover, well, there's a surprise. I'm real surprised. It's not broken down, nothing's fallen off it, nothing's gone wrong.
Got an MOT as well.
Not what you expect from a P38, is it? And it still goes up and down when you press that button on the dashboard. So, really, 3 winners. Cheap, fun, it's really surprising. So now, all you've got to do, another little challenge, you've actually got to sell them for real money. Off you go.
Okay.
See you next time.